Good evening. I'm Seth Broder. I'm the host of the ARC Report. Welcome to another show. Today's guests are Anna Rivera, the Executive Director of the ARC Gloucester, as well as Celine Fortin, the Associate Executive Director of the ARC New Jersey, both to discuss a major change for individuals with disabilities under the age of 21 that just passed in January of this year. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, Seth.
So, Anna, I understand that this past January there was legislation that was passed whereby individuals under the age of 21 will no longer be serviced by the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Instead, these individuals will be serviced by the Department of Children and Families. Can you discuss that?
Absolutely. Children and youth under the age of 21 will now be provided services with funding through the Department of Children and Families, particularly the Children's System of Care. And we're excited because we have terminated the contract that we had with DDD for children for these services, and now we've initiated a new contract with the Department of Children and Families.
How will this affect the individuals that the ARC Gloucester serves?
It has impacted primarily, I would say, 4 programs. It's our in-home respite program and our Saturday drop-off program, inclusive recreation program, and our camp. Our in-home respite program is a program that provides a worker that goes into the home and gives a break to the family caregiver. And the Saturday drop-off program is where the family can drop off the individual at one of our locations, and it's more of a group setting, and they get to do a lot of exciting things, games and arts and crafts. They do community outings, and our inclusive rec provides for funding for the families to be able to do more recreational activities with the individual, just like you and I would go out with our families into the community for some socialization. Our camp, of course, provides, during the summer months, provides recreational activity either as a day program or as a residential program. All are very popular programs for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I think that the transition has been very successful. It has been seamless. That was something that was a primary focus for us at the ARC Gloucester. We wanted to make sure that everyone who was currently being served continued to be served at the same level and at the same quality of care that we provide. So I think it has been a very good transition.
Have you received any feedback from the families of the individuals that you serve?
Well, one thing that's very important is if they have concerns, if they have questions on how to navigate this new system, we have set up internal to the organization. Brenda Scarterfield is our Assistant Executive Director of Family Support, and she and Irene Thomas, who is our Family Support Coordinator, they have come up to speed with all the changes, and they're able to guide the families and help them navigate this new system. They can be reached at 856-848-8648. So I think that we've done internally what we can to make this transition as smooth as possible. Something else that, behind the scenes we have to do in terms of an administrative function is that with the termination of the contract with DDD, we had to set up new accounting procedures and processes to make sure that the funds are accounted for the way that the Department of Children and Families want them accounted for. The expense reports are different, and programmatically, the reports that have to be submitted are different. So we had to make sure that from an administrative standpoint that we were able to manage this new change internally, as well as provide guidance to the families.
Well, it sounds like it wasn't really an overwhelming process from an admin perspective for your organization to be able to adhere to the new procedures, if you will. And it seems like that the upside for the families and the individuals themselves really outweighs any kind of inconvenience that there might have been from an administrative level. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's what we do. It's what the ARCs are known for, and that's providing guidance to families. We're a grassroots organization. That's what we do best. That's our primary focus. That will not change no matter what new regulations or changes we have to deal with. The primary focus will never change, and that is to be available and supportive to the families and to make sure that they receive the services that they need. So the stuff that happens behind the scenes is daily work operations. Again, I want to urge the families that if they are experiencing any difficulties with this transition, that they make sure that they contact us. Also, very important is that they become members of the ARC, because oftentimes we'll get information that we can share with them, make them aware of changes that are coming, and help prepare them so that when the change actually happens, they're prepared and it's not as overwhelming as it can be. There's an ARC chapter in every county in the state. I am very proud of my sister ARCs. I know that they are well prepared as well to help the families. The ARC of New Jersey is a tremendous resource. They provide us with information, and so it's important that our families become members of the ARC so that we can do what we do best, and that's to help them.
Super. And speaking of the grassroots organization that you mentioned, the ARC Gloucester, prior to going to commercial, if you could give our viewers just an update on what's happening.
Well, there's a lot happening. There's a lot of transition. There are changes with DDD as well that we are preparing for. We have not received an increase in our contracts in 6 years now, I would say. So it's extremely important that if families are out there, if they believe in what we do and they support us, that they contact their legislators and let them know that we do need an increase in the budget.
Super. That's great. Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to come out again. And we'll see you next time. And we'll be right back. Welcome back. Our next guest is Celine Fortin, the Associate Executive Director from the ARC of New Jersey. Celine, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So I was discussing with Anna the big change that took place in January of this year. Can you explain from a state level why this change occurred?
Well, a little over a year ago, Governor Christie, when he was putting together his budget for the new fiscal year, looked at a way to streamline services for many departments in the state of New Jersey, but particularly for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And at that time, they made the decision that all services for children, whether they had disabilities or they had mental health issues, addictions, or behavioral issues, should probably all be under one roof, and therefore make it easier for kids to access services.
Okay. And Children Family Services is actually not administering the services, is that correct? It's Perform Care?
Right, so the Department of Children and Families is the department. The Children's System of Care is the name of the division that actually oversees the services for our kids now. But there's an organization called Perform Care. They're an administrative service organization, or ASO, and that's actually the body that the families would actually be interfacing with when they call or they want to register their kids.
Okay, so if an individual is currently receiving services from DDD, Division of Developmental Disabilities, how does the change now affect that individual?
Okay, so what happened is on January 1st, all children under the age of 21, their services were moved from the Division of Developmental Disabilities over to Division of Children and Families. For most of the kids who were receiving services, they wouldn't have even noticed a real big change, and the families wouldn't have noticed anything because they're still receiving services from the same providers, whether it was the ARC Gloucester, another chapter of the ARC, or another service provider. So the same person was coming into their home, the same camp was still there, the same staff were still there. So the families wouldn't have noticed a change. They would have just gotten a letter telling them that now the department that oversees their kids is Department of Children and Families. So for most of them, they didn't notice a change except for the name of the department. For new individuals who were never receiving services from the Division of Developmental Disabilities, all the new families out there who may be interested in getting services for their kids, for them now they'll be going straight through to Perform Care and working with them in order to get their child registered for services.
I want to take a step back, Celine. What was the role that the New Jersey ARC played with regard to this change? That seems to be a really big change.
Well, we had always worked very closely with the Department of Human Services and the Division of Developmental Disabilities to make sure that all the programs and services that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities need were there, were well funded, that the rules and regulations that were in place around them made it an atmosphere that created good services for folks. So now that the children have moved to Children and Families, we want to make sure that the same thing happens there, that there's good services, there's enough services, there's enough funding, and that the providers have what they need to do a good job. So at the ARC of New Jersey, we're working just as hard with the Department of Children and Families as we do with the Department of Human Services to make sure that, one, there are adequate services, two, that the transition is seamless for the families, make it as easy as possible, and they get all the information that they need. And that, three, moving forward, as the kids get older and transition back over to the Division of Developmental Disabilities, that is seamless as well.
So it sounds like what you're saying, that you personally and the ARC of New Jersey really is in support of this, and you think it's a great move. Is that correct?
I think that having all services for kids, no matter what the issue is happening in their, whether it's with them or their family, in one place is a good thing. It gives the kids more access to services. It makes it easier for the families to get into one department and just work with one organization or one provider agency. It's a lot less confusing. I think that the Department of Children and Families has worked really hard to meet the needs of the kids, to answer the questions, and to resolve any of the issues that have come up. They've been very responsive. So we're really looking forward to this being a really good change for kids and families.
You know, and generally speaking, what kind of services are available for individuals that have developmental disabilities?
So for the kids under 21 that have moved over, the funding for all of those services were just moved from one department to another. So if they were already receiving services, those services continued. For children who are new into the system, or if a child needs new services, unfortunately there's still a limited amount of funding, so there are a very limited amount of services. But we're working on that. We're hoping that as the families get registered and get known to the Department of Children and Families, they're able to make the argument for more money in the budget every year in order to increase services. So that's really important. I think that the big thing that families look for is the family support services, the respite care, someone to care for their child when they need to go out or they need to do something or just have some time for themselves. The in-home programs, such as Anna mentioned earlier, the camp programs, which is a great resource for the families as well as the children when they go to camp, recreation programs. But because now they're in this bigger department, there's also in-home behavioral support. There's what they call mobile response, which would be a family calling at any time of the day or night. The nice thing about using a Perform Care system is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week system. You can call at any time of the day or night, get a live person on the phone. If there's an emergency that's happening, families can tell the people at Perform Care that, and if they want and if it's needed, a mobile response person can come out to their home and help them figure out what's going on, what they need to do next.
You mentioned contacting Perform Care. Have you received any feedback in terms of what families' experience has been when reaching out to Perform Care?
Well, when the shift first happened back in January, they weren't quite expecting the number of families to call. They knew that they were getting about 16,000 families into their system, but many of them were getting services. So they had a cadre of staff that had come over from the Division of Developmental Disabilities to help them through the transition. Unfortunately, when the shift happened on January 2nd, thousands and thousands of families began calling in, and they were really overwhelmed. And they'll be the first to admit that it wasn't the smoothest transition that they could have had. But since that time, they have added more staff on. They've been better at answering the questions of the families. They have a better handle on what families are going to be looking for. And now they can pretty much guarantee that any time a person calls, they're going to get a live person on the phone to talk to, which I think is a comfort to families.
Absolutely. You know, I want to talk about something that's always a major issue for families, the community care waiting list. Can you talk how that has been impacted, if at all, by this change?
So when kids were over at the Division of Developmental Disabilities, many families put their child on the waiting list so that they would at some point make it to the top of the list and then have funding through the community care waiver for some more intensive services, typically things that are out of home like residential services and group homes. So families, even though their kids were young, under the age of 21, they would have put their children on that waiting list knowing that it could be years and years and years, decades even, before they ever made it to the top of the list. The children that moved over to the Department of Children and Families, if their name was on that waiting list, their name will stay there. It's not going to move. Of course, there's many things happening over at the Division of Developmental Disabilities that'll make changes that may make it so that by the time the child goes back over to the DDD system, that waiting list hopefully might be a moot point and they won't have to worry about waiting anymore because there'll be more supports and services there.
Great. How can somebody find out more information about this change, number one, and generally speaking about the ARC of New Jersey?
Well, if they are interested in more information about the change, we've got a couple of things. Our website, which is arcnj.org, one of the things that we've done is we've put up all the fact sheets, the frequently asked questions, the flow charts, the graphs, anything that they might need about the transition, about what to do, whether your child was already in the system, wasn't already in the system. They need to look for eligibility, they need to fill out applications, the phone numbers they need, it's all on